Anyone who has a position of leadership is held accountable for the people who they lead. That's even more true when we are leaders of God's people. We become representative of God. And what that means is that we should display godly characteristics in everything that we do. Of course, I am so glad to be here for the Sanctuary Sunday School. As you can see, everything looks a little bit different because, like I said over the weekend, the studio where I normally record is closed because of the quarantine. So I am using what I have at home. So you'll see the set switching out a little bit until I settle on something I really like or until the studio is back open. But I have something for you. It is called the Design Your Decade Challenge. And it starts April 1st through April 20th. You do not want to miss this because I am quarantined in my home and the creativity is exploding and I'm just chalking this full of nuggets. A lot of people are feeling discouraged, saying, they came in 2020 with a lot of hope for a new vision and they're kind of frustrated and discouraged. We're not having that. We are kicking up the second quarter and taking it up a level. So what I want you to do is text. Yes, I have a new text system now. Text decade. That's decade, DECADE. Decade to 44222. That's decade 44222. Once you send that initial text, you'll automatically get a prompt to opt in, and then you will start receiving information for 20 days. You're going to get a video every day, activities, and devotionals to keep you motivated to make this the best decade of your life. This week's subject is the need for just leaders. And man, we could not have a more timely lesson than that. The need for just leaders. And we're in the book of Malachi in the second chapter. And he jumps right in talking to the priests. Now, we need to understand the function of the priests because they were acting in the temple. And they were the only ones who had access to certain things. And the people had to bring their offerings to the priest. And the priest went to God on behalf of the people. So this is a really high and sacred position that the priests were in. And we see here that God was not honoring the priest's sacrifice and that he was upset with them because they were corrupt. And there was going to be judgment against the priests. And Malachi told them that he was going to curse them and that their seed would be cursed. And that's a little nugget in there because sometimes when you're in a position of leadership, not only what you do not only affects you, but it affects your family as well. And so you really need to be mindful of that, how when you make a decision, how many people it's actually going to impact. So he said, you're going to be cursed. And man, listen to the imagery that Malachi uses. He said, it's going to be dung on your face. And he said, even the dung of the animals that you sacrificed is going to be on your face. And think about that. Think about what dung is waste. So think about what when you go to a zoo or to a petting zoo or to a farm, right? What that animal waste smells like. And he said that's going to be on your face. And that's just an indication of how displeased God was with them. Think about how disgusting and gross that was, right? That's just how disgusted God gets with a leader who has become corrupt. And we talked about iniquity, and there's no such thing as one sin being greater than another sin. And iniquity is sin, but iniquity is also more corrupt, unfair, and unjust. As saints of God, we know people, and I know some people who are really nice people, but they're not saved. And you really want them to get saved because you don't want them to have to suffer eternally. Then there are those people, and you're just kind of like, you know what, you might just need to get what you deserve. And so we can't really take that position as people of God. But there are those people. That's what iniquity is. It's being evil. And they were being evil. And not only that, it said that they were stumbling. They were causing the people to stumble in their own iniquity. And that right there really struck me. And that's something I'm extremely cautious about, because I would have to say that in my 50 years of growing up in church, I have seen everything in church that they do in the world. The only thing I haven't seen would probably be murder. But anything else, they're doing it. And it's a really sad situation when People try to leave the world and they come into the church and they find the same thing. And people are saying it's okay for whatever reason. And we cannot do that. And God, as we can see, is so upset about it to the extent that he's ready to curse them and bring shame to them. And then he talked about them being contemptible. But before we get to that, he brought in Levi. Now, Levi is the son of Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel. And Levi also became one of the 12 tribes. But Levi was godly and he was upright, and he was the priestly tribe. And all of these vows, these covenants, these agreements, the standard that was set by Levi was the standard that they were to keep. And they had disgraced the standard and the covenant and the laws of Levi. And that's what God was telling them. And he said, but I'm going to keep my word. God told him, he said, he's God and he's going to keep his word because he's not a liar and he doesn't change. So what that says to me is anytime you're in a position where you obstruct the flow of the will of God, that's a very dangerous position to be in. And that's how you bring a curse on yourself, because God just said, I'm not going to change. My standard of righteousness is not going to change. My holiness is not going to change. So if you get in the way and try to block that, then you're going to need to be moved out of the way. And as we know, God has all the power to do that, bring you down, do shame, bring shame or destroy you, whatever it is, to make sure that God's plan always stays true. And we know that God is a promise keeper and he does not go back on his word. That's why as leaders it's so important to stand on the word of God, because if we don't, then we will surely fall. You can't stand if you're not standing on the word of God. It's only a matter of time. And he was talking about how the priests were contemptible, where the people would not even hear them. When you go and you hear the people talk about somebody as being a hypocrite, and they don't believe in them because they know that they're not right. And that's the position that they had fallen into. And so you have to be careful, because sometimes people don't separate individuals from the office or from the call of God. And that's dangerous. So if I am unjust or evil, then people aren't going to say that Val is no good. Well, they may say that, but then they're going to say, well, all ministers, all Sunday school teachers, is nothing to it. There's nothing to church. There's nothing to God, because I proclaim myself to be a servant of God. So we've got to be careful as leaders where we're leading people to, and the direction that we're going, so that when people follow us, they will be in a good position. God is talking about just leaders, the need for just leaders. The world is in dire need of just leaders today, and we're in an election year. It is time for us to go out and vote. I'm not sure, about the options. I can't really vouch for the character of any of the leaders that we have on the ballot, but we do want to be prayerful and ask God to lead us and guide us and direct us, because no matter what happens, no matter who's in office, God is in control. And as we know, just like God handled these priests, he's going to handle people who are in leadership positions over his people. All we've got to do is trust God and make sure that if you're a leader, that you are a just leader. And if you're not a leader, you need to follow a just leader.